Rain hammered the glass towers of downtown Seattle as tech mogul David Chen pulled his Tesla into the underground garage of his waterfront penthouse. The November storm had arrived without warning, turning the evening commute into chaos. David barely noticed. His mind was still in the boardroom, calculating quarterly projections and investor demands. At 38, he'd built TechVision from a startup into a billion-dollar empire. Success had become his only language. As he stepped into the private elevator, his phone buzzed. Rita Flores, his property manager, her message was brief. Security flagged someone on the rooftop garden. Handling it. David frowned. The rooftop was restricted to residents only. He changed the elevator's destination, curiosity overriding his exhaustion. The doors opened to reveal Seattle's skyline obscured by sheets of rain. And there, beneath the covered pergola, sat his cleaning woman. She was huddled on a metal bench, a small plastic container balanced on her lap, eating what looked like rice and beans with a plastic spoon. Her blue uniform clung to her body, soaked through despite the partial shelter. "Sarah." David's voice cut through the rain. "What are you doing up here?" She jumped, nearly dropping her food. Her eyes went wide with panic. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "Why aren't you eating in the staff room?" he demanded, stepping closer. Water dripped from his expensive coat. Sarah Martinez stood quickly, clutching her container. She was young, maybe 25, with tired eyes that seemed older. The staff room is occupied, sir. I didn't want to disturb anyone." Before David could respond, Rita appeared from the stairwell, perfectly composed despite the weather. "Mr. Chin, I apologize for this situation. I was just coming to address it." "Address what?" David asked sharply. Rita's expression remained professionally neutral. "Sarah broke protocol today. One of the residents reported missing jewelry from the 15th floor. Sarah was the last person in that unit." Sarah's face went pale. "No, that's not true. I cleaned that apartment this morning, but everything was fine. I even logged it in the system." "The resident is quite certain," Rita continued smoothly. "I've already begun the incident report." David looked between them. Something felt off, but exhaustion clouded his judgment. "We'll deal with this tomorrow. Sarah, go home. Rita, send me your report by morning." As he turned to leave, he caught Sarah's expression, not guilt, but something else entirely. Heartbreak mixed with resignation, as if she'd expected this outcome all along. The image haunted him throughout the night. If this story speaks to you, like this video and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. You might connect with someone nearby who feels the same. Subscribe for chapter where David discovers evidence that changes everything. David couldn't sleep. The image of Sarah sitting in the rain, that look of quiet devastation on her face, kept pulling him back to consciousness. At 3 a.m., he gave up and made coffee. His penthouse felt too large, too empty. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Seattle's glittering skyline, but tonight it all seemed hollow. He'd built an empire, yet couldn't shake the memory of a young woman eating alone in a storm. By 6 a.m., he was in his home office reviewing Rita's incident report. It was thorough, professional, damning. According to the document, Sarah had a history of concerning behavior, taking extended breaks, leaving work areas before completion, and now suspected theft. But something nagged at him. David hadn't succeeded in tech by ignoring his instincts. He pulled up the building's security system on his tablet. The footage from the 15th floor showed Sarah entering the apartment at 9:47 a.m. She worked methodically, room by room. At 10:23 a.m., Rita entered the same apartment. Sarah was in the bedroom while Rita moved through the living room, stopping at a decorative cabinet. David leaned closer to the screen. Rita's back was to the camera, but her movements were deliberate. She opened the cabinet, reached inside, then closed it. She left 3 minutes later. Sarah emerged from the bedroom at 10:31 a.m., completed her work, and left at 10:45 a.m. She'd never gone near the cabinet. David sat back, his coffee forgotten. He rewound the footage, watched it again. There was no ambiguity. Rita had accessed the cabinet while Sarah was in another room. But why? Rita had been his property manager for 5 years. She ran the building flawlessly, handled difficult residents with grace, commanded respect from the entire staff. He pulled up personnel files. Sarah Martinez, 2 years with the cleaning service, consistently high performance reviews, single mother to a 7-year-old son named Miguel. She worked 6 days a week across 3 buildings to afford her apartment in Renton. Rita Flores, impeccable credentials, 15 years in luxury property management, previously worked for several high-profile clients in Los Angeles. David made a decision. He called his head of security, Marcus Webb. "Marcus, I need you to review something." Quietly. By noon, Marcus was in David's office, his expression grim. "You were right to call me. I pulled additional footage from the past 3 months. This isn't the first time." He showed David a compilation. Rita entering units after cleaning staff left, always brief visits, always near valuables. Never taking anything herself. She was smarter than that. But creating situations where the cleaning staff could be blamed. "Why?" David asked. Marcus shrugged. "Control, most likely. Keep the staff scared, dependent, easy to manage. Or maybe she's running some kind of insurance scam with the residents. Either way, it's calculated." David felt anger rising, cold and sharp. "Sarah's been eating on the roof because of this, hasn't she?" "I checked with building services," Marcus confirmed. "Rita restricted her break room access last week, claimed she needed to earn back privileges after an alleged complaint. No formal complaint exists in the system." David stood, pacing to the window. Below, Seattle bustled with afternoon traffic. How many people down there were just trying to survive, while others manipulated the system for power? "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. David turned, his decision made. "Set up a meeting. Tomorrow morning. Sarah, Rita, and the building's legal counsel. And Marcus. Make sure Sarah knows she's not in trouble. She's been through enough." That evening, David did something he hadn't done in years. He visited the building's staff area. Sarah wasn't there, but her coworker, an older woman named Dolores, was restocking supplies. "Mr. Chen." She looked startled. "Is something wrong?" "No, Do you know Sarah Martinez well?" Dolores's expression shifted, protective. "She's a good girl. Works hard, never complains. Whatever Rita said about her, it's not true." "How long has Rita been targeting her?" The question hung in the air. Dolores studied him carefully, weighing trust against risk. Finally, she spoke. "Since Sarah started. Rita doesn't like people who won't bend." Sarah asked questions, stood up for other workers. "Rita's been making her life hell ever since." David nodded slowly. "That ends tomorrow." As he left, Dolores called after him. "Mr. Chen, Sarah has a son. She can't afford to lose this job. Please." "She won't," David promised. But some things are about to change. The conference room on the building's management floor felt like a courtroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Elliott Bay, but nobody was admiring the scenery. Sarah sat alone on one side of the table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She'd arrived 30 minutes early, dressed in her neatest clothes, black pants and a pressed white shirt. Her eyes held the wary exhaustion of someone expecting the worst. Rita entered precisely on time, projecting confidence. She wore a tailored navy suit, her posture perfect. She barely glanced at Sarah as she took her seat. David arrived last, accompanied by Marcus and Jennifer Lau, the building's attorney. He debated this approach all night, how to handle this without destroying Sarah in the process. "Thank you all for coming," David began, remaining standing. "This meeting is about the incident reported 3 days ago regarding missing jewelry from Unit 1507. Rita opened her folder smoothly. I have my complete report here. I've seen your report, David interrupted. I've also reviewed the security footage. The room went still. Sarah's eyes lifted, confused hope flickering across her face. Rita's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly on her pen. David nodded to Marcus, who activated the wall monitor. The footage played, Sarah cleaning methodically, Rita entering after, Rita at the cabinet, Rita leaving. As you can see, David said quietly, Sarah was never near the jewelry cabinet. But you were, Rita. Rita's composure finally cracked. That footage is misleading. I was checking the apartment's condition after Sarah finished. It's part of my job. Opening a resident's personal jewelry cabinet is part of your job? Jennifer asked, her lawyer's tone precise. I was ensuring nothing was disturbed. This isn't the first time, David said, pulling out the compilation Marcus had prepared. 3 months ago, Unit 2210. 6 weeks ago, Unit 1803. Last month, Unit 2105. Same pattern. You enter after the cleaning staff leaves, access personal belongings, then file reports suggesting theft or damage. Sarah was staring at the screen, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, tears of vindication after months of gaslit doubt. Rita stood abruptly. This is absurd. I've managed this property for 5 years without complaint. Without formal complaints, Marcus corrected. I spoke with 12 staff members yesterday. They painted a very different picture. Jennifer pulled out her own folder. We also contacted your previous employers. Interesting pattern there too. 3 properties in Los Angeles, all with similar situations. Staff turnover increased dramatically under your management. 2 separate insurance investigations into missing items, though nothing was proven. Rita's face had gone white. You can't prove. The footage proves you accessed the cabinet, David said firmly. Your reports prove you blamed Sarah. Staff testimony proves a pattern of manipulation and intimidation. That's enough. He turned to Sarah, his voice gentler. Ms. Martinez, I owe you an apology. You've been subjected to a hostile work environment, false accusations, and deliberate sabotage. That's unacceptable. Sarah couldn't speak. She just shook her head, overwhelmed. David looked back at Rita. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. You'll be escorted to collect your personal belongings. If any items go missing from this building in the next 24 hours, the police will be involved. Rita's carefully constructed mask shattered. You're making a mistake. She's just a cleaning woman. You're throwing away years of excellent service for treating another human being with the respect she deserves. David finished. Yes, I am. After security escorted Rita out, David sat down across from Sarah. Jennifer discreetly left to give them privacy. I'm sorry, he said simply. I should have looked into this sooner. Sarah wiped her eyes, voice shaking. I thought I was crazy. She made me doubt everything. Every day I came to work wondering what I'd be accused of next. How long has this been happening? Since I started. But it got worse 6 months ago when I reported a safety violation. Rita said I was being difficult, that I needed to know my place. After that, she trailed off. David felt anger tighten his chest again. That's over now, and I'd like to offer you a new position. Sarah looked up, startled. What? I need someone I can trust to help reorganize our building management. Someone who actually cares about the people here, who notices when things are wrong. The pay is significantly better, and you'd have a real voice in how this building operates. Mr. Chen, I clean floors. I don't have management experience. You have something better, David said. You have integrity. The rest we can learn. Sarah sat in stunned silence, processing. Finally she asked, why? Because 3 days ago, I saw you eating in the rain, David said quietly. And it reminded me that I'd stopped seeing people. I'd stopped asking why. You deserved better then. Everyone here deserves better now. She nodded slowly, tears flowing again. Okay. Yes. Thank you. As she left, David stood at the window, watching rain begin to fall again over Seattle. For the first time in years, he felt like he'd done something that actually mattered. Sarah's first day in her new role began at 6 a.m., not because it was required, but because old habits died hard. She arrived at the building wearing clothes she'd bought with her first advance, professional, but not too expensive. She still couldn't quite believe this was real. David had arranged an office for her on the management floor, small but bright, with a view of the harbor. When she walked in, she found a desk, a computer, and a note in David's handwriting. Trust your instincts. DC. Her first task was meeting with the cleaning and maintenance staff, the people she'd worked alongside for 2 years. The conference room filled slowly, faces showing curiosity mixed with suspicion. Change rarely meant good things in their experience. I know this is weird, Sarah began, standing at the head of the table. 3 days ago, I was cleaning apartments. Now I'm supposed to help run this place. I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. But you know what it's like, said Dolores, the co-worker who'd spoken to David. You know what we deal with. I do, Sarah agreed. So here's what I'm proposing. This week, I want to hear from each of you. What's working? What's not? What would make your jobs easier, safer, better? A younger man named Tommy raised his hand tentatively. Will anything actually change? Or is this just for show? It was a fair question. Sarah had seen enough corporate theater to understand the cynicism. I can't promise everything will change overnight, she said honestly. But Mr. Chen gave me a direct line to him. And he seems to actually care about what happens here. So let's find out what's possible. Over the next week, Sarah collected stories. Maria, who cleaned the upper floors, described how the supply closet's broken ventilation gave her constant headaches. James, a maintenance worker, explained that the emergency equipment was outdated and potentially dangerous. Keisha, who worked nights, revealed that the building's security protocols left her vulnerable. Sarah documented everything, then did something Rita had never done. She investigated personally. She climbed into the supply closet and felt the stale air. She examined the maintenance equipment with James. She walked Keisha's night route and noticed the blind spots in camera coverage. When she presented her findings to David, he listened without interrupting. The ventilation fix is about $8,000, she concluded. New safety equipment is $12,000. Additional security cameras, maybe $5,000. Total around $25,000 for immediate needs. David nodded. Done. What else? Sarah blinked. That's it. Just done. Sarah, I spend more than that on conference room furniture. If it makes people safer and lets them do their jobs better, it's not even a question. She felt something shift inside her, the realization that maybe, just maybe, things could actually change. But not everyone was happy about Sarah's promotion. One afternoon, she received an email from a resident on the 21st floor. I find it concerning that someone with no management credentials is now in a position of authority. This building's standards are declining. The words stung more than Sarah wanted to admit. She was in the middle of drafting a careful response when David appeared at her door. Saw the email, he said. Want me to handle it? No, Sarah said firmly. If I'm going to do this job, I need to handle things like this myself. She wrote back, thank you for your concern. I understand the transition may seem unusual. My role focuses on building operations and staff welfare, areas where my 2 years of hands-on experience provide valuable insight. If you have specific concerns about building services, I welcome the conversation. Professional. Firm. Not apologetic. The resident never responded, but Sarah noticed their complaints to the front desk dropped significantly. That evening, as Sarah was preparing to leave, she found David in the lobby talking with Marcus about security upgrades. "How was your first week?" David asked. "Exhausting," Sarah admitted. "But good. The ventilation fix starts tomorrow." "I heard. Maria already thanked me 3 times." Sarah smiled. "She cried when I told her. Said in 20 years, nobody had ever listened." David's expression grew serious. "That's the problem, isn't it? We build these systems and forget there are actual people in them. Your job is to make sure I don't forget again." As Sarah walked to her car, a reliable Honda she'd been terrified she'd lose during Rita's campaign against her, she thought about perspective. A week ago, she'd been eating in the rain, believing she might be fired for something she didn't do. Now she had a voice, a purpose, and the backing to actually help people. Her phone rang. It was her son Miguel's school. "Ms. Martinez? I'm calling about Miguel's college fund application. There seems to be an error. It shows a contribution of $50,000. Sarah's breath caught. She'd mentioned to David in passing that she'd started a college fund but could only contribute $50 a month. "That's not an error," she said quietly, tears starting again. "That's real." After hanging up, she sat in her car for a long moment, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her life's trajectory. She'd spent so long just surviving that thriving felt almost dangerous, like something that could be taken away at any moment. But maybe, she thought as she started the car, maybe it was time to believe in second chances. Miguel Martinez was 8 years old and suspicious of good news. When your mom worked 3 jobs and good news usually meant, not as bad as it could be, you learn to be cautious about sudden changes. But this week, his mom had been different. She smiled more. She came home earlier. And tonight, she'd brought pizza. Not the frozen kind, but real pizza from that place with the line out the door. "Okay, what's going on?" Miguel asked, setting down his homework. "Did you win the lottery?" Sarah laughed, setting plates on their small kitchen table. Their apartment in Renton wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a view of the parking lot, but it was theirs. "Better than the lottery. I got a new job." "Doing what?" "Helping run the building where I work. Making things better for the people there." Miguel studied her carefully. "Does it pay more?" 8 years old and already thinking about money. Sarah's heart ached. "Yes, Mijo. It pays more. Enough that you don't have to worry." "I don't worry," Miguel said automatically, the lie they both knew he told to protect her. Sarah sat down across from him. "You know the school called today. About your college fund." Miguel's eyes widened. "That's not until I'm 18. "I know. But someone helped us make sure it's there waiting for you. $50,000. Miguel was silent, processing. Then, who would do that? Someone who believes things should be fair. That people who work hard shouldn't have to choose between food and futures. Is this because of what happened? With that mean lady? Sarah had tried to shield Miguel from the situation with Rita, but kids noticed everything. He'd seen her come home crying, heard her anxious phone calls, felt the stress radiating through their tiny apartment. "Partly," she admitted. "But it's bigger than that. Sometimes people forget that everyone matters, not just the people with money or power. Someone reminded me of that. And now I get to help remind others." Miguel took a bite of pizza, thinking. "So you're like a superhero?" "Hardly. No, really. Superheroes help people who can't help themselves, right? That's what you're doing." Sarah felt tears threatening again. She'd cried more in the past week than the past year. "I'm just trying to make things a little less hard." "That's what superheroes do, Mom." The next day, Sarah brought Miguel to the building on a Saturday. She wanted him to see where she worked, to understand that this was real and stable. David was there, working in his penthouse. When Sarah introduced them, Miguel shook his hand solemnly. "Thank you for helping my mom," Miguel said. "She works really hard." David crouched to Miguel's level. She does. And now she's helping a lot of other people work better too. You should be proud of her. I am. After showing Miguel her office, they went to the rooftop garden, the same place where everything had changed. The rain had cleared, revealing Seattle's skyline in autumn afternoon light. This is where you were eating in the rain? Miguel asked quietly. Yes. Why didn't you just go inside? Because someone made me feel like I didn't belong inside. Like I wasn't worth the space I took up. Miguel looked at her with those two old eyes. That's how I feel at school sometimes. Because our clothes aren't new, or because we live in Renton instead of near the school. Sarah's heart cracked. Mijo, you belong everywhere you choose to be. Don't let anyone tell you different. Then why did you let that lady tell you that? The question hung in the air. Why had she? When had she internalized the message that she was less than, that she should accept crumbs and be grateful? Because I forgot, Sarah said slowly. I forgot that I matter. That we all matter. But I'm remembering now. They sat together on the bench, looking out at the city. From up here, Seattle gleamed with possibility. Tech towers and coffee shops, sailboats and seaplanes, a city constantly reinventing itself. Can I tell you something? Miguel asked. My teacher said I should apply for the gifted program. But I told her no because the after-school part costs money. Sarah turned to him. Miguel, why didn't you tell me? Because you already work so hard. I didn't want to add more. That's my job, Mijo. To make sure you have chances. Apply for the program. We can afford it now. Really? Really? As they prepared to leave, David caught them in the lobby. Miguel, you left your backpack in Sarah's office. Thanks. Miguel took it, then paused. Mr. Chen, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you help us? You don't even know us. David was quiet for a moment. You know what I realized? I'd built this whole successful company, made all this money, but I'd stopped seeing people. Your mom reminded me that every person has a story, a struggle, a reason they do what they do. Helping her wasn't charity. It was recognizing that she'd earned better than she was getting. Miguel nodded seriously. Like justice. Exactly like justice. On the drive home, Miguel was unusually quiet. Finally, he said, Mom, when I grow up, I want to help people like you and Mr. Chen do. Like, really help them. What would you do? I'm not sure yet. Maybe a lawyer? Or a doctor? Someone who can make things fair. Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. You can be anything you want, Mijo. That's the point of all this. You get to choose now. That night, after Miguel was asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and her laptop. She'd started taking an online management course. David had arranged for the company to pay for it. She thought about ripple effects, how one moment of being seen had changed not just her life, but Miguel's future. How many other people were out there, working hard, staying invisible, waiting for someone to notice. Her phone buzzed. A text from David, staff meeting Monday at 9 a.m. We're discussing expansion of the support program to other buildings in the company portfolio. Your input will be crucial. Sarah smiled. The ripple was spreading. The Monday morning meeting started at precisely 9 a.m. in TechVision's downtown headquarters. Sarah had never been to the main office before, a gleaming 40-story tower where David's tech empire orchestrated operations across the Pacific Northwest. The conference room intimidated her with its minimalist design and wall of windows overlooking Puget Sound. Around the table sat people whose titles Sarah barely understood. Chief Operations Officer, VP of Real Estate Assets, Director of Human Resources. She was the only person in the room without a college degree. David started the meeting by outlining his vision, implementing the building management reforms across all 12 properties TechVision owned or managed in Seattle. Sarah's pilot program at the waterfront property has been successful, he explained. Staff satisfaction up 40%, turnover down 60%, efficiency improvements documented across all metrics. I want to scale it. That's when Richard Thornton, the VP of Real Estate Assets, cleared his throat. He was mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of man who'd spent his career in corner offices. With respect, David, we're talking about a significant investment based on 1 month of data from one building. The ROI isn't proven. The ROI is people not quitting, Sarah said before she could stop herself. The room went silent. She'd broken the unspoken rule. New people don't challenge executives. Richard turned to her, his smile not reaching his eyes. I'm sure that seems significant from an operational perspective, but from a portfolio management standpoint. From an operational perspective? Sarah interrupted, feeling heat rise in her chest. These are people's lives, not line items. When Maria doesn't have to breathe toxic air for 8 hours, when James doesn't risk injury with faulty equipment, when Keisha feels safe working nights, that's not just operational. That's human. David was watching her carefully, not intervening. Richard leaned forward. Ms. Martinez, I've managed real estate portfolios for 25 years. I understand you have personal experience with these issues, but scaling decisions require broader analysis. Emotional arguments don't change financial reality. Then let's talk numbers, Sarah said, pulling out her tablet. In the past month, we've had 0 workers' comp claims at the waterfront property. Previous monthly average? 3. At $8,000 average per claim, that's $24,000 in savings right there. Equipment downtime is down 75%. Emergency repair calls down 60%. Those are real cost savings. She pulled up another chart. Turnover cost for trained building staff averages $12,000 per employee when you factor in recruiting, training, and productivity loss. We've had 0 departures in a month. Previous monthly average across your portfolio? 8 employees. That's $96,000 per month in prevented costs. The room was paying attention now. Add improved service quality leading to higher resident retention, reduced insurance premiums from better safety protocols, and increased property values from better maintained buildings. The ROI is there. You just have to be willing to see past the initial investment. Richard's expression had shifted from dismissive to calculating. You've documented all this? Complete analysis in the shared folder, including staff testimonials, incident reports, and projected 5-year outcomes. David spoke up. Richard, I brought Sarah in specifically because she sees what we miss from up here. If the numbers support it, which apparently they do, what's your objection? Richard was silent for a long moment. Finally, no objection. Let's proceed with a phased rollout. But I want monthly metrics reviews. Agreed, Sarah said. After the meeting, David caught up with Sarah in the hallway. That was impressive. And risky. Was I out of line? No. You were exactly what I needed you to be. Honest. But you made an enemy in there. Sarah nodded. I figured. But if I can't speak up in a room full of executives, how can I ask staff to trust me? David smiled. Exactly my thinking. But be careful. Richard's been here a long time. He's got influence. Noted. The next week tested that warning. Sarah began visiting TechVision's other properties, meeting with staff, documenting conditions. What she found shocked her. At the Capitol Hill property, the staff break room doubled as a storage closet, with barely room to sit. At the Fremont building, maintenance workers shared safety equipment that should have been individual issue. At the Queen and Tower, cleaning staff weren't allowed to use the building's main elevator during business hours. They had to use the freight elevator, adding 30 minutes to their workday. Sarah documented everything, then sent a comprehensive report to David and Richard. Richard's response was terse. Many of these issues are standard industry practice. Recommend prioritizing actual safety violations. Sarah wrote back, staff dignity isn't an issue. It's a requirement. That afternoon, she received an email from HR requesting a meeting to discuss professional communication expectations. David called her before she could spiral into anxiety. Ignore it. I shut that down. Richard tried to go around me. It didn't work. He's going to keep pushing back, Sarah said. Probably. Are you going to let that stop you? She thought about Miguel asking why she'd let Rita make her feel small. No. Good. Because I have another meeting set up. This time with all the property managers, the people who replaced Rita at each building. Some of them aren't happy about the changes. They need to hear from you directly why this matters. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Sarah spent the week preparing, but also doing something else. She invited staff from each property to submit anonymous questions and concerns. She received over 200 responses. Friday came. The conference room filled with 12 property managers, each protective of their territory, their methods, their control. Sarah stood at the head of the table and made a decision. Instead of presenting her polished analysis, she pulled up the anonymous submissions. Before we talk about protocols and policies, she said, I want you to hear from the people who work in your buildings. She read selected submissions aloud. I've worked in property management for 6 years. I love my job, but I'm tired of being treated like I'm stupid just because I clean floors. My manager told me if I didn't like the conditions, I could leave. I have 3 kids. Where am I supposed to go? I reported a safety issue and was told I was being dramatic. 2 weeks later, someone got hurt. It could have been prevented. The room was uncomfortable, shifting in their seats. I'm not here to attack anyone, Sarah continued. But we have a choice. We can keep doing things the way we've always done them, or we can build something better. Not because it's easy or because it looks good for PR, but because it's right. One property manager, a woman named Catherine, spoke up. What you're describing sounds ideal, but it's not realistic. We have budgets, schedules, residents with demands. Sometimes compromises have to be made. Compromises, Sarah repeated. Who decides what gets compromised? Because from where I sat for 2 years, it was always the people with the least power who got compromised. The meeting continued for 2 hours, sometimes tense, sometimes productive. By the end, Sarah had commitments from 8 of the 12 managers to pilot changes at their properties. 4 remained skeptical but agreed to consider it. As people filed out, Catherine approached Sarah. I didn't like you coming in here and telling us how to do our jobs, she said bluntly. But that story about the safety report hit home. I had a similar situation last year that I didn't handle well. I'm willing to learn. It was a start. That evening, Sarah sat in her new office, still getting used to the space, and thought about power. Not the power to control, but the power to change. To speak truth even when it was uncomfortable. To risk conflict for the possibility of justice. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria, the cleaning woman whose ventilation issue had been the first fix. My daughter asked why I'm smiling more. I told her someone finally listened. Thank you for being that someone. Sarah saved the message. On the hard days ahead, and she knew there would be many, she'd need reminders of why this mattered. 3 months into her new role, Sarah had settled into a rhythm. The changes were spreading. Slowly, with resistance, but spreading. 6 of TechVision's 12 properties had implemented the new protocols. Staff satisfaction surveys showed consistent improvement. But success brought visibility, and visibility brought scrutiny. Sarah was reviewing quarterly reports when her office phone rang. The receptionist sounded uncertain. Ms. Martinez? There's someone here to see you. She says her name is Rita Flores. Sarah's hands went cold. Tell her I'm not available. She says she'll wait. Sarah sat frozen for a moment, then called David. Rita's in the lobby. I'll handle it, he said immediately. No. Sarah surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. I need to do this. She found Rita in the waiting area, looking thinner than Sarah remembered, her usual polished appearance slightly worn. Their eyes met, and Sarah saw something she hadn't expected: shame. "I don't expect you to talk to me," Rita said quietly. "But I needed to say something." Sarah crossed her arms, staying near the elevator. "Say it." "I was wrong. What I did to you was cruel and calculated. I told myself I was maintaining standards, but I was just afraid." Afraid of what? Of becoming irrelevant. Of people realizing that power doesn't require cruelty. Rita's voice cracked. "I've spent the last 3 months in therapy, trying to understand why I needed to break people to feel in control. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth I'm finally facing." Sarah studied her, looking for manipulation, for the trap. But she only saw exhaustion. "Why are you here, Rita?" "Because you deserved an apology 3 months ago, and I was too proud to give it. And because I heard what you're doing here. Really doing. Building something better. I wanted you to know that it matters. That it's possible because you refused to become what I was." Sarah felt her anger soften slightly, though wariness remained. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Just to say I'm sorry, and that I hope someday you can find a way to forgive me. Not for me. For you." Rita stood, preparing to leave. "I'm working as a rental agent now. Smaller company, no staff to manage. It's humbling, but honest. Maybe that's what I needed." As Rita walked toward the door, Sarah heard herself say, "Wait." Rita turned, hope and fear mixing on her face. "I can't forgive you yet," Sarah said carefully. "Maybe not ever. What you did changed my life, and not all in good ways. I still have nightmares about being accused, about losing everything." Rita nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "But," Sarah continued, "I appreciate you coming here. And I hope your therapy helps. Everyone deserves a chance to grow." After Rita left, Sarah sat in the lobby for a long time, processing. David found her there 20 minutes later. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I don't know. Part of me wanted to rage at her, tell her exactly what she put me through. But she looked so broken. That doesn't erase what she did." "I know. But I've been thinking a lot about cycles. How hurt people. If I'd become bitter and cruel from what she did, I'd just continue that cycle." David nodded slowly. "You're wiser than I was at your age. Hell, wiser than I was 3 months ago." Sarah smiled slightly. "We're both learning." That evening, Sarah attended a community meeting at Miguel's school. The district was proposing budget cuts that would eliminate arts programs and increase class sizes in lower-income neighborhoods. Sarah listened to parents argue passionately for their children's futures, watched teachers defend programs they'd built with their own money, saw Miguel and his classmates hold up signs, "Music matters," and "Small classes, big dreams." When the public comment period opened, Sarah stood. Her hands shook. Public speaking still terrified her, but she thought about the conference room with Richard, about facing Rita, about all the times she'd stayed silent. "My name is Sarah Martinez. 3 months ago, I was cleaning buildings for minimum wage, worried about keeping my lights on. Today, I have a management position because someone saw past my job title to my humanity." She looked around the room. These kids deserve the same chance, to be seen as more than budget lines or test scores. My son wants to be a lawyer or doctor. He's brilliant and determined. But without music class, he loses the creativity that makes him whole. Without small classes, he loses the attention that helps him thrive. Her voice grew stronger. You want to cut budgets? Start at the top. Cut administrative bloat. Cut consultants who've never taught a day in their lives. Don't cut the programs that give kids like mine a fighting chance. The room erupted in applause. Miguel beamed at her from the front row. The school board didn't reverse their decision that night, but they agreed to form a committee to explore alternatives. Sarah volunteered immediately. On the drive home, Miguel was vibrating with excitement. Mom, you were amazing. Everyone was talking about it. I was terrified, Sarah admitted. But you did it anyway. That's what bravery is, right? She reached over and ruffled his hair. When did you get so smart? I learned from the best. Back at her apartment, Sarah found an email from Catherine, the property manager who'd been skeptical at first. Sarah, I wanted to update you. We implemented the staff dignity protocols at Queen and Tower last week. Today, one of our cleaning staff, a woman who's worked here 8 years and never said more than necessary, came to my office. She told me that for the first time, she feels valued. She's recommending the job to her sister who needs work. I didn't understand before what you meant about culture change. I do now. Thank you for pushing us. Sarah saved the email in a folder she'd created, Reasons to Keep Going. She was building that folder deliberately, evidence for the days when doubt crept in, when the old voices whispered that she didn't belong, that she'd gotten lucky, that it couldn't last. Because the truth was, some days she still felt like that woman eating in the rain, waiting to be seen. Healing wasn't linear. Growth wasn't either. But she was learning to hold both truths, the trauma of where she'd been and the hope of where she was going. Her phone buzzed. David, board meeting next week. They want to hear directly from you about the program expansion. Prepare for questions. You'll do great. Sarah smiled, already mentally preparing. A year ago, the idea of presenting to a corporate board would have been absurd. Now it was Tuesday. She thought about Rita's visit, about cycles breaking and new patterns forming, about Miguel's words. Doing it afraid. Maybe that was the secret, not waiting until you felt ready, but moving forward anyway, trusting that the path would form beneath your feet. Sarah opened her laptop and started preparing her presentation. She had a board to convince and a future to build. The TechVision boardroom occupied the entire 40th floor, with 360-degree views of Seattle. Sarah had been in impressive spaces before, but this was different. This was designed to intimidate. 12 board members sat around the curved table, most of them gray-haired, all of them wealthy beyond anything Sarah could comprehend. They represented venture capital firms, tech dynasties, old Seattle money. Combined, they controlled billions in assets. And they were here to evaluate her pilot program. David had coached her. Be confident but not arrogant. Use data but tell stories. Remember, you know this better than anyone in that room. Still, as she connected her laptop to the presentation system, Sarah felt the old familiar fear trying to resurface. The voice that said she didn't belong, that she was out of her depth, that any moment someone would realize she was just a cleaning woman pretending to understand business. But then she thought about Maria breathing clean air, about Miguel in his gifted program, about Catherine's email. This wasn't about her. It was about them. Good morning, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. 3 months ago, I was eating lunch on a rooftop in the rain because I'd been told I didn't deserve space indoors. Today, I'm going to tell you why that moment was the best thing that could have happened to this company. She had their attention. Sarah walked them through the data, retention up 65%, productivity up 40%, insurance claims down 70%, resident satisfaction at all-time highs. But then she did something unexpected. She played a video. It showed Dolores, now in her 60s, speaking to the camera. I've cleaned buildings for 42 years. This is the first time anyone asked what would make my job better. The first time I felt like more than invisible hands. Then James. I was about to quit. The equipment was dangerous, the schedule was brutal, and nobody cared. Now I'm training new hires, teaching them it doesn't have to be that way. Then Maria, Keisha, Tommy. Voices that had never been heard in rooms like this. When the video ended, the boardroom was silent. Finally, board member Patricia Grayson spoke. She was 70-something, old tech money, known for her sharp questions. Ms. Martinez, these testimonials are moving. But sentiment doesn't pay dividends. What's the long-term financial justification? Sarah pulled up her next slide. The janitorial services industry has an average annual turnover rate of 200%. That means you replace your entire workforce twice every year. The cost isn't just recruitment, it's institutional knowledge lost, client relationships destroyed, endless training cycles. She clicked to the next slide. Our 6 pilot properties have reduced turnover to 15%. Applied across your full portfolio, that saves approximately $2.3 million annually. That's not sentiment. That's bottom line. Another board member, Marcus Chin, leaned forward. But you're also proposing significant upfront investment, equipment upgrades, salary increases, expanded benefits. How long until ROI? 14 months for full ROI based on current projections, Sarah answered. But here's what that analysis misses. Reputation value. TechVision is a tech company that owns real estate. Your brand is innovation and forward-thinking. What happens when word spreads that you're also the company that treats service workers like humans? How many top engineers choose you over competitors because they see how you operate? She paused. You can't quantify that in spreadsheets, but it's real. Culture is currency in tech. You all know that. David was smiling slightly. She'd gone off script, but it was working. Patricia spoke again. You mentioned you were eating in the rain because someone told you that you didn't deserve space indoors. Was that person terminated? Yes. Good. But that raises a question. How do we prevent future situations like that without your personal experience to guide us? Sarah had anticipated this. By building accountability into the system. Monthly anonymous surveys. Third-party audits of workplace culture. Direct reporting channels that bypass property management. And most importantly, by promoting from within, giving people with ground-level experience a voice in decision-making. Like yourself, Patricia observed. Like myself, Sarah agreed. But not just me. We've identified 12 current staff members across your properties with leadership potential. I'm proposing a development program, training, mentorship, pathways to management positions. You want to prevent future REITers? Promote people who remember what it's like to be powerless. The questions continued for another hour. Some board members were convinced, others skeptical, all of them calculating risk versus reward. Finally, Patricia called for a vote on full program expansion across all TechVision properties, including the development initiative. The vote: 9 in favor, 3 against. As the board members filed out, Patricia approached Sarah. That was impressive. Particularly the culture as currency argument. Where did you study business? I didn't, Sarah said simply. I studied survival. Turns out there's overlap. Patricia laughed. Genuine, surprised. Indeed there is. 40 years ago, I was a secretary told I'd never make it in tech because I was a woman. Someone gave me a chance anyway. I see that fight in you. Don't lose it. After everyone left, David and Sarah stood by the windows, looking out at Seattle. You crushed it, David said. We crushed it, Sarah corrected. None of this happens without you believing it could. I just opened a door. You built the house. Sarah thought about that metaphor. Building houses, creating spaces where people could exist fully. There's more to build. The staff development program, the expansion, holding everyone accountable including ourselves. Scared? David asked. Terrified, Sarah admitted. But also excited. Is that normal? I think that's how you know you're doing something that matters. That evening, Sarah attended a celebration dinner with the staff from the original pilot program. They'd rented out a small restaurant in Georgetown, nothing fancy, just good food and better company. Dolores stood to make a toast. To Sarah, who taught us that speaking up isn't insubordination, it's self-respect. Everyone raised their glasses, but Sarah shook her head. No to all of us. Because I didn't change anything alone. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You shared your stories, took risks, believed things could be different. This is our victory. Later, as Sarah drove home, she called her mother, something she'd been putting off because she knew the conversation would be emotional. Mija, her mother answered. I've been waiting for you to call. Miguel told me about the board meeting. It went well, Mama. Of course it did. You're my daughter. A pause. I wish your father was here to see this. Sarah's father had died when she was 12, a construction accident, a company that cut safety corners to save money. It was part of why she'd fought so hard for equipment upgrades and worker protections. Me too, Sarah said softly. I think about him every time we fix something that could hurt someone. About how different things might have been if someone had cared enough to protect him. You're protecting him now, her mother said. Every person you help, every safety measure you fight for, that's his legacy living through you. Sarah pulled over, crying too hard to drive safely. They were good tears though, the kind that washed away old pain while watering new growth. When she finally made it home, Miguel was waiting up past his bedtime. Mom, how'd it go? She scooped him into a hug. We won, Mijo. The program is expanding to all 12 buildings. Miguel pulled back, his face serious. Does this mean you're going to be busier? Sarah heard the real question. Are you going to disappear into work like you used to? She sat down with him. Sometimes I'll be busy, but never too busy for you. That's a promise. One of the reasons I fought for this is so kids like you don't grow up watching their parents work themselves to exhaustion. So we're going to find balance together, okay? Okay. Miguel hugged her again. I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of us, Sarah said. We're a team. That night, after Miguel was asleep, Sarah stood at her apartment window looking out at Seattle's lights. Somewhere out there were people eating in rain, people being told they didn't matter, people surviving when they should be thriving. She couldn't save everyone. But she could build something that might catch a few more people before they fell through the cracks. Her phone buzzed, a text from David. Article hitting tomorrow. Seattle Times. Thought you should know. Sarah's stomach dropped. Media attention was the one thing she'd hoped to avoid. What's the angle? She texted back. From invisible to indispensable. How one woman's courage changed corporate culture. They interviewed board members, staff, even Miguel's school principal. It's good, Sarah. Really good. Sarah stared at her phone. Part of her wanted to hide from the attention. But another part, the part that had grown stronger these past months, understood that visibility was power, and power could be used to help others. Okay, she texted back. Let's see what tomorrow brings. The Seattle Times article hit on a Wednesday morning. By noon, Sarah's email had exploded with over 300 messages. Some were supportive, other companies wanting to replicate the program, workers sharing their own stories, activists celebrating the change. Others were less kind. Another diversity hire destroying merit-based business, read one. This is what happens when feelings replace competence. Sarah tried to ignore the hateful ones, but they accumulated like poison, seeping into her confidence. By mid-afternoon, a conservative business blog had picked up the story with the headline, Woke Capital. Tech billionaire promotes janitor to placate progressive mob. David called her into his office. I'm sorry about this. I should have anticipated the backlash. It's not your fault, Sarah said, though her hands trembled slightly. I knew visibility came with risks. The company is putting out a statement reaffirming your qualifications and the program's success metrics. But Sarah, this might get worse before it gets better. Cable news is picking it up. You might get contacted by reporters. What should I say? That's up to you. You can say nothing, that's completely valid. Or you can tell your story your way before someone else tells it wrong. Sarah thought about it all afternoon. That evening, a producer from a national morning show called, requesting an interview. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. But then Miguel came home from school, upset. Some kid's dad said you only got your job because Mr. Chen felt sorry for you. That you're not really qualified. Sarah's protective fury rose. What did you say? I said my mom works harder than anyone I know and is smarter than his dad will ever be. Miguel's lip quivered. But what if people believe it? What if they think you don't deserve it? Sarah pulled him close. Mijo, there will always be people who try to diminish our achievements because they can't imagine succeeding themselves. But their opinions don't define our reality. So what are you going to do? I'm going to tell the truth. Our truth. Sarah called the producer back and agreed to the interview, on one condition. Miguel could come with her, and they'd talk about why this program mattered for families like theirs. The interview aired the following Monday. Sarah wore a simple blue dress, Miguel in his school clothes. The host started with the expected questions about her rapid promotion, the program's details, the board's decision. Then Sarah redirected. Can I tell you what the real story is here? It's not about me getting promoted. It's about a system that was designed to keep people invisible, and what happened when someone decided to see them anyway. She talked about Maria's headaches, about James's safety concerns, about Keisha's fear working alone at night. She talked about the families behind every worker, the dreams deferred by poverty, the potential wasted by indifference. My son wants to be a lawyer, Sarah said, putting her arm around Miguel. A year ago, I was teaching him that we couldn't afford dreams. Now I'm teaching him that he deserves every opportunity to chase them. That's what this program is really about, breaking the cycle that tells people like us to stay in our lane. The interview went viral. By evening, #DreamsNotLanes was trending on social media. Thousands of workers shared their own stories of being dismissed, ignored, or told they didn't belong. But success attracted opposition. A property owners association sent a formal complaint to TechVision's board, claiming the new protocols set dangerous precedents that would destabilize industry standards. 3 residents from TechVision Properties signed a petition demanding Sarah's removal, claiming she was unqualified and divisive. Richard Thornton, who'd been quiet since the board meeting, requested a private meeting with David. Sarah wasn't invited, but David told her about it afterward. Richard thinks we're moving too fast, David said. He's worried about the backlash, about property values, about investor perception. He wants to pause the expansion. What did you tell him? That we're not pausing. But he has allies on the board. Patricia warned me that 3 board members are reconsidering their votes, saying they didn't anticipate this level of controversy. Sarah felt the old fear returning, the sense that everything could be taken away as quickly as it had been given. What if they reverse the decision? Then we fight, David said firmly. But I'm not going to lie to you, Sarah. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. He was right. Over the next week, conservative media outlets ran segments about radical workplace transformation and the end of merit-based employment. A rival tech CEO publicly criticized David for prioritizing optics over operations. Sarah received a death threat via email, vague enough to not be actionable, but specific enough to terrify her. David immediately arranged security for her apartment and Miguel's school. Is this worth it? Sarah asked him one evening, exhausted and scared. Maybe I should step back, let things cool down. Is that what you want? Sarah thought about it honestly. No. But I don't want Miguel growing up afraid either. Then we make sure he's safe while you keep fighting. Because here's the thing, Sarah, this backlash? It means we're threatening something real. People don't fight this hard unless they're afraid of losing power. That weekend, something unexpected happened. Workers from across Seattle organized a rally outside TechVision headquarters. Not hundreds of people, thousands. Janitors, security guards, food service workers, healthcare aides, all the invisible labor that kept the city running. They carried signs, "We see Sarah, dignity is not radical, every worker matters." Sarah watched from David's office, overwhelmed. I didn't ask for this. No, David agreed. But you inspired it. There's a difference. One of the organizers called Sarah, asking if she'd speak at the rally. Every instinct screamed to say no, to avoid more visibility, more risk, more exposure. But she thought about her father, about the construction accident that could have been prevented, about Miguel learning to stand up for himself, about every person who'd sent her a message saying, "Thank you for fighting." She went downstairs. The crowd roared when they saw her. Sarah approached the microphone, her legs shaking but her voice steady. "I'm not a hero," she began. "I'm just someone who got tired of being invisible. But looking at all of you, I realize I was never alone. We've all been invisible together. The people who clean the buildings, secure the doors, serve the food, care for the sick. We keep everything running, and we deserve to be seen." The crowd cheered. "They want us to believe this is radical, that basic dignity and fair treatment are too much to ask for. But I'm here to tell you it's not radical. It's overdue. And we're not going back to being invisible. Not anymore." The rally made national news. By Monday, 5 more companies in Seattle had announced similar staff dignity initiatives. The momentum was building, not just at TechVision, but across the city. But that night, Sarah received a call from Miguel's school. He'd been in a fight, another student had called her a welfare queen, and Miguel had punched him. Sarah raced to the school, her heart in her throat. She found Miguel in the principal's office, his knuckle bleeding, his face defiant and terrified. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said immediately. "But I couldn't let him talk about you like that." The principal, Ms. Reyes, was sympathetic but firm. "Miguel, I understand you were provoked, but violence isn't the answer. However," she looked at Sarah, "the other student has been disciplined for his language as well. His parents have been contacted about the harassment." On the drive home, Sarah and Miguel sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Sarah spoke. "You can't hit people who say terrible things. There will always be people who say terrible things." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Miguel asked, voice breaking. "Just let them." "No. You stand up with words. You tell the truth. You refuse to be ashamed of who we are and where we come from." Sarah pulled over, turning to face him. "What I'm doing is hard, Mijo. It makes some people uncomfortable, even angry. That's not your fault or mine, but it is our reality right now. Are you okay with that?" Miguel thought about it. "If it means other kids don't have to watch their moms eat in the rain? Yeah. I'm okay with it." Sarah hugged him, crying into his hair. "When did you get so brave? I learned from you." Six months after the rally, Sarah stood in the newly renovated community room of TechVision's Capitol Hill property. The space had been transformed from a neglected storage area into a bright, welcoming hub, computers for staff to access educational resources, a library of career development books, comfortable seating, and a wall dedicated to our stories. Today was the graduation ceremony for the first cohort of the Staff Leadership Development Program. 12 people from across TechVision's properties who'd completed 6 months of intensive training in management, conflict resolution, financial literacy, and leadership. Maria stood at the podium, her voice strong. "A year ago, I was just the cleaning lady with the headaches. Today, I'm the assistant property manager at Fremont Tower, and I'm breathing clean air while I do it." She looked directly at Sarah. "Someone saw me when I felt invisible. Now I'm learning to see others." One by one, graduates shared their stories. James, now head of building maintenance across 3 properties. Keisha, promoted to night security supervisor with a team she was training in safety protocols. Tommy, working on his associate's degree in business management while managing the Queen and property. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she looked out at the crowd, program graduates, their families, TechVision staff, David, and Miguel sitting in the front row. "When I ate lunch in the rain that day," Sarah began, I thought I was at my lowest point. Turned out, I was at my turning point. Because that's when someone decided to ask, why instead of, what? Why was I out there? Why did I look scared? Why was the system failing? She paused. The question why is powerful. It demands we look past the surface, past our assumptions, past our comfort. And when we ask why enough times, we can't ignore the answers anymore. Sarah gestured to the graduates. These 12 people asked why about their own situations. Why should I accept less than I deserve? Why can't I grow? Why must I stay invisible? And then they did something harder. They answered those questions with action. After the ceremony, Patricia Grayson approached Sarah. I have a proposition. The Grayson Foundation is launching a new initiative, a regional program to replicate what you've built here. We want you to lead it. Sarah's eyes widened. That's a massive undertaking. Which is why we need someone who understands what's at stake. Not just the metrics, but the human cost of getting it wrong. Patricia handed her a folder. Think about it. No pressure, but the opportunity is there. That evening, Sarah and David met for coffee at their usual spot, a small cafe near the waterfront where they'd started meeting weekly to decompress and strategize. Patricia made you an offer, David said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? She asked my permission first. Old school courtesy. He smiled. What are you thinking? Sarah stirred her coffee. I'm thinking it's terrifying and exciting and exactly what needs to happen. But I'm also thinking about Miguel, about having some stability after all the chaos. What does he think? I haven't told him yet. I wanted to process it first. David leaned back. Can I tell you something? When I first saw you on that rooftop, I felt guilty. That was my first instinct. Guilt that someone who worked for me was suffering. But then I felt angry. And then curious. And then determined. You didn't just change policies, Sarah. You changed how I see the world. That goes both ways, Sarah said softly. You could have ignored me. Most people in your position would have. But you chose to believe that something was wrong and that you had power to fix it. We fixed it, David corrected. And we're not done. The next morning, Sarah talked with Miguel over breakfast. She laid out the opportunity, the pros and cons, the potential for more chaos but also more impact. Miguel listened carefully, then asked, Would you be happy? I think so. Scared, but happy. Then you should do it. Besides, he grinned, I'm getting pretty good at dealing with people who have opinions about our family. No more punching, Sarah warned. No more punching, he agreed. Just devastating verbal takedowns. Sarah laughed, then called Patricia. I'm in. But I have conditions. Name them. 1. Miguel's education and security remain covered regardless of what happens with the program. 2. I report directly to the Foundation Board. No intermediaries who can undermine the work. 3. We hire from within communities we're trying to help, not outside consultants who don't understand the reality. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Done. When can you start? 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in her new office. Modest but functional, located in a South Seattle community center. Her title was Director of Economic Dignity Initiatives, a name she'd helped craft. The walls were bare except for one frame, a photo of her eating lunch on the rooftop, taken by building security that rainy day. David had given it to her. To remember where you started, he'd said. And how far I've come, she'd added. Her first major project was partnering with 15 companies across Seattle to implement dignity-centered workplace reforms. Some were enthusiastic, others skeptical, all of them willing to try because the evidence was undeniable. Treating workers well wasn't just moral, it was profitable. 6 months into her new role, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Rita. I saw the article about your new position, Rita said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. I wanted to congratulate you. Sarah studied her former tormentor. Rita looked different. Softer somehow, less armored. Thank you. How are you? Better. Still in therapy. Still trying to understand why I became who I was. Rita hesitated. I'm teaching now. A class on ethical management at community college. Trying to prevent future MES from hurting future yous. Sarah felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the possibility of it. That's good work. It's the least I can do. Rita turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Sarah, you're doing what I never had the courage to do. Actually changing things instead of just protecting your position within them. I'm glad you won. After Rita left, Sarah sat with the complicated feelings. Healing wasn't linear. Some wounds would always ache. But maybe, just maybe, cycles really could be broken. That evening, she attended a community meeting where workers from a local hospital system were trying to organize for better conditions. She listened to their stories, the impossible shifts, the inadequate equipment, the dismissive management. One woman, a nursing assistant named Grace, spoke with tears in her eyes. I love my patients, but I'm drowning. And when I asked for help, they told me if I couldn't handle it, someone else could. Like I'm replaceable. Like I don't matter. Sarah stood. You matter. Your work matters. And you're not alone. She shared her story. The rain, the fear, the transformation. I can't promise immediate solutions, but I can promise you'll be heard. Because being heard is the first step to being helped. After the meeting, Grace approached her. Thank you. For a minute there, I felt seen. Sarah smiled. Now let's make sure everyone feels that way. 1 year after the rooftop incident, David hosted a celebration at the waterfront property. Staff from all 12 buildings attended, along with graduates from the leadership program, community partners, and board members. David made a toast. A year ago, I thought I understood success. I measured it in profits and property values and market share. Then someone taught me that real success is measured in human dignity, in potential unlocked, in cycles broken. He raised his glass towards Sarah. To the woman who taught a billionaire how to see. Sarah stood, emotion tightening her throat. To everyone who refused to stay invisible. To those who speak up even when their voices shake. To the janitors and security guards and maintenance workers who keep our world running. You are seen. You matter. And we're just getting started. The crowd erupted in applause. Later, as guests mingled, Sarah found herself back on the rooftop, the same spot where everything had changed. Miguel joined her, now 9 years old and already showing signs of the man he'd become. Mom, do you ever think about what would have happened if Mr. Chen had just driven past that day? If he hadn't stopped? Sarah considered it. Sometimes. But I also think about all the people who did drive past, who did ignore me, who did see me and chose not to care. It only took one person choosing differently to change everything. That's kind of cool, Miguel said. Like one choice can start a whole chain reaction. Exactly. Which is why every choice matters. Yours, mine, everyone's. Miguel was quiet for a moment. When I'm older, I want to do what you do. Help people like you helped our family. Sarah hugged him. You already are, Mijo. Every time you stand up for what's right, every time you see someone struggling and choose to help, that's the work. David joined them on the rooftop, carrying 3 cups of hot chocolate. Thought you might want these. It's getting cold. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker to life across Seattle. The Space Needle glowed in the distance, ferries crossed the dark water, and somewhere in all those buildings, people were working, hoping, struggling, dreaming. You know what I realized, David said. That day I saw you in the rain, I thought I was saving someone. But really, you saved me. From becoming the kind of person who stops seeing people. From building an empire with no soul. Sarah shook her head. We saved each other. That's how it works. Real change isn't one person rescuing another. It's people choosing to see each other's humanity and building something better together. Miguel looked up at both of them. Is that what they mean by it takes a village? Sarah smiled. Exactly that. No one succeeds alone. We're all connected. Every choice, every action, every moment of courage or kindness ripples outward in ways we can't always see. As they headed back inside, Sarah paused for one last look at the rooftop bench, the place where her life had pivoted from survival to purpose. She'd come so far from that rainy evening, but she'd never forget the woman who sat there, scared and unseen. That woman was still part of her, would always be part of her. The difference was, now she knew her worth. Inside, the celebration continued. Music played, people laughed, children chased each other between tables. Sarah moved through the crowd, stopping to talk with staff members, hearing their updates, celebrating their progress. Maria showed her photos of her new apartment, affordable housing she could finally access with her increased salary. James introduced his daughter, who wanted to be an engineer. Keisha announced she'd been accepted to a criminal justice program. Each story was a testament to what became possible when people were given more than just jobs, when they were given dignity, support, and belief in their potential. As the evening wound down, Sarah found a quiet corner and pulled out her phone. She opened a voice memo app and began recording, something she'd started doing to document this journey. It's been exactly 1 year, she said softly. 1 year since I sat in the rain, eating cold rice and thinking my life would never change. I was wrong. But more importantly, I learned that change doesn't happen because we wait for it. It happens because someone decides to make it happen. She paused, gathering her thoughts. If you're listening to this and you feel invisible, if you're struggling and wondering if anyone sees you, if you're eating your lunch in the rain, literally or metaphorically, I want you to know something. You matter. Your story matters. Your dignity matters. And somewhere out there is someone who will choose to see you, to stand with you, to fight alongside you. But here's the secret. You can also be that person for someone else. You can be the one who asks, why, instead of walking past. You can be the one who breaks the cycle. Because change doesn't require perfection or power, it requires courage and compassion. Sarah ended the recording and sent it to the Foundation's social media team. Within hours, it would be shared thousands of times, another ripple spreading outward. 3 months later, Sarah received a letter forwarded from TechVision. The envelope was worn, the handwriting shaky. Dear Ms. Martinez, you don't know me. My name is Dorothy Reeves, and I'm 67 years old. I've worked as a school janitor for 35 years. Last week, our district implemented new dignity protocols based on your Seattle program. For the first time in my career, I have proper equipment, adequate breaks, and a supervisor who asks about my well-being. I cried when they installed a real break room with comfortable chairs and a refrigerator. Such small things, but they mean the world. I'm writing to thank you and to tell you that your courage gave me courage. Last month, I spoke up at a school board meeting about safety concerns I'd stayed silent about for years. They listened. Changes are being made. You taught me that my voice matters, even at 67, even as just a janitor. Thank you for showing me, for showing all of us, that we deserve to be seen. With deep gratitude, Dorothy Reeves. Sarah read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She posted it on the wall of her office, next to the rooftop photo and dozens of other letters, emails, and messages that had arrived over the past year. This was the real measure of success, not the headlines or the board presentations, but the Dorothys of the world finding their voices, the Mariahs breathing clean air, the Miguels learning they could dream without limits. That evening, Sarah sat with Miguel doing homework at their kitchen table. A new table, in a new apartment with actual bedrooms and windows that looked out at something besides a parking lot. Mom, I have to write an essay about someone who inspires me, Miguel said. Can I write about you? Sarah's first instinct was to deflect, to suggest he write about a scientist or athlete or historical figure. But then she thought about modeling the lesson she'd been teaching, that ordinary people doing extraordinary things deserved recognition. "I'd be honored," she said. "But remember, I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who decided to stop accepting less than I deserved and helped others do the same." "That's exactly what heroes do, Mom." Later that night, after Miguel was asleep, Sarah stood at her window looking out at Seattle. The city sparkled with possibility, with promise, with the potential for change that existed in every moment, every choice, every person willing to see beyond the surface. Her phone buzzed, a text from David. "Just got word that the Seattle model is being studied by companies in Portland, San Francisco, and Austin. Your work is spreading." Sarah smiled. The ripples continued. She thought about that moment a year ago, cold, wet, scared, eating in the rain. She thought about how close she'd come to giving up, to accepting that this was all her life would ever be. And she thought about the single choice that had changed everything. David Chen deciding to ask, why, instead of walking away. But more than that, she thought about her own choice. To believe she deserved better, to speak her truth even when it shook her voice, to keep fighting even when it would have been easier to disappear. Sarah picked up her journal and wrote one final entry for the day. "Today I learned that legacy isn't built in moments of triumph. It's built in the thousands of small decisions to choose dignity over convenience, courage over comfort, and humanity over hierarchy. A year ago, I was invisible. Today I see clearly, not just myself, but all the other invisible people waiting for someone to notice, to care, to act. This is the work. Not just changing policies or reforming systems, but changing how we see each other. Teaching people that there are no just janitors or just security guards or just anyone. There are only human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and opportunity." The moment that awakened a billionaire's heart also awakened my own. I remembered that I mattered. And in remembering, I helped others remember too. This is how we change the world. One person seen, one voice heard, one heart awakened at a time. Sarah closed the journal and turned off the light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new people needing to be seen. But tonight she would rest, not as a victim or a survivor, but as a woman who had transformed pain into purpose, invisibility into impact, and a moment in the rain into a movement for change. The storm had passed. The light remained. And Sarah Martinez, once told she didn't deserve space indoors, had built something that would shelter countless others for years to come. Sarah's journey reminds us that transformation begins the moment we decide we deserve better, and commit to helping others find the same courage. What's one thing you can do today to see someone who feels invisible? Share your commitment in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of courage, change, and the power of human dignity. Share this with someone who needs to remember their worth, and join our community of people committed to building a more just and compassionate world. Remember, you are not invisible. You matter. Your voice matters. And together, we can change everything. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep choosing to see, keep choosing to care, and keep choosing to make a difference. The end.